This video tutorial I will explain how to configure multiple data source using Spring Boot JDBC. Here you can see ArcDB which has employee table. Here you can see user DB which has user table, and here you can see the Spring Boot application. When Spring Boot application receives employee insert request, then it has to connect to ArcDB and insert employee record in employee table. When Spring Boot application receives user insert request, then it has to connect to user DB and insert user record in user table. We will see how to do that. Here you can see ArcDB, and it has employee table, and it does not have any record. Here you can see user DB, and it has user table, and it does not have any record. We will see how to insert records in employee table and user table. Here you can see Spring Boot application and its folder structure. Here you can see the pom.xml. Here I have included the dependency of web, JDBC and MySQL connector. Here you can see application.properties file, and Spring Boot application has to connect to two database. So here I have configured data source 1 and data source 2. Data source 1 is connecting to ArcDB and username and password of ArcDB and the driver class name. And data source 2 connects to UserDB and username and password of UserDB and the driver class name. Here I have defined the class Spring Configuration, which is a configuration class. When Spring Boot application starts, it reads this configuration class, and it creates first data source object. First data source object uses connection information of ArcDB. This one. Then it creates a second data source object. Second data source object uses connection information of UserDB. This one. Then it creates a JDBC template 1 object which uses first data source. So using JDBC template 1 object, we can connect to ArcDB. Then it creates a JDBC template 2 object which uses second data source. So using JDBC template 2 object, we can connect to UserDB. Here I have defined the class employee, and it has 4 properties: ID, name, age and salary, which are equal to columns in employee table. And it has employee constructor which accept name, age and salary, and getter and setter methods for these 4 properties. Here I have overridden toString method. Here I have defined a class user, and it has 4 properties: ID, name, email ID and gender, which are equal to columns in user table. And it has user constructor which accept name, email ID and gender, and getter and setter methods for these 4 properties. And here I have overdone toString method. Here I have defined a class employee repository, which is a repository class. Here I have defined JDBC template 1 object, and here I have applied auto void annotation. So when Spring Boot application starts, The Spring Boot application inject JDBC template 1 object. Using JDBC template 1 object, we can connect to ArcDB. As per configuration, JDBC template 1 object using first data source, and first data source using connection properties of ArcDB. And it has insert method which accept employee object. Here I have defined the SQL, which is insert SQL, and using update method of JDBC template 1 object, inserting one row in employee table, and here I am getting generated employee ID, which is the primary key, and displaying that. Here I have defined the class user repository, which is a repository class. Here I have defined JDBC template 2 object, and here I have applied auto-wide annotation. So when Spring Boot application starts, it creates a JDBC template 2 object and inject here. Using JDBC template 2 object, we can connect to UserDB. As per configuration, JDBC template 2 object using second data source, and second data source using connection properties of UserDB. And it has insert method which accept user object. Here I have defined the SQL to insert record in the user table. Using update method of JDBC template 2 object, I am inserting one record in user table, and here I am getting generated user ID, which is the primary key, and displaying that. Here I have defined a class application, which is Spring Boot application, and it implements command line runner interface and provide implementation of run method. When Spring Boot application starts, this method will be called first. Here I am creating employee object. Then I am calling insert method of employee repository object and passing employee object. Here you can see one record is inserted in employee table. Here I am creating a user object. Then I am calling insert method of user repository and passing user object. Here you can see one user record is inserted in user table. You can get Java source code link from the description of the video. In mobile, to see the description, click on this icon. It will expand like this, and here you can see the description. It contains Java source code links. Click on these links to get the Java source code.